Countdown and we're live. Hello, good morning, good evening, good day. Welcome. We'll give everyone a minute to jump in. I know this is being recorded and we'll certainly share this out afterwards and be publicly available. We're going to get started in just a minute to talk about how Impensa built a healthcare supply chain data platform in just 60 days. In a minute, we'll kick off with some introductions, introduce my esteemed colleagues and guests here today, and then go through a quick agenda. Excuse me. All right. Since it's being recorded, we won't give everyone too much time. They'll be able to watch back through this, but from a quick agenda, I'm going to go quickly between slides. Here's your welcome. Appreciate everyone taking the time to spend a little bit of time with us to talk through a unique use case, but to me, one that's really impressive when it comes to time to market and speed. I'll do quick introductions. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jonathan Israel. I'm the EVP of sales here at Astrato. I've been in and around the data and analytics space for almost 15 years now. Joined, and I'll go from left to right on the slides, Joe Warbington, if you want to give yourself a quick introduction.
Yeah, hi everybody, Joe Warbington. I'm a healthcare industry principal at Snowflake. Been here about 3 years, but have worked with analytics and Astrato for longer than that too, having come to Snowflake from Astrato. So happy to be here. I get to see what organizations, especially healthcare providers, health systems, are doing around the globe. And this topic today is very close to home, as this is something we're working on and trying to break down these barriers across the supply chain side. So really happy to be here and work with Rob and Dave here too.
Great, thanks, Joe. Dave, over to you.
Okay, I'm Dave Beto, and I'm one of the founders and CEO of Impensa. I've been in the healthcare world for over 40 years. Spent the early days in the hospital and in the vendor side, and then jumped out and have been building businesses since then in healthcare analytics. So our new business has us here today. Thanks to talk about.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Over to you, Rob.
Hey, I'm Rob Corley. It's nice to be here today. I spent over 20 years at the three major group purchasing organizations and deep into analytics and data. My background is industrial engineering, and I've worked in manufacturing and healthcare and a lot of different industries, but healthcare really fascinates me, the real challenges of trying to bring facilities together to benchmark, to share data and to improve. It's really difficult in healthcare. We've been working through solutions that will help that.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Okay, so from a next steps, let me get my slides going here. What we're going to focus on today is kind of the Impensa journey, the decisions you guys made today or made to get to where you are today. We're going to get into a demonstration and then certainly some questions that may come up along the way. So over to you, Dave and Rob, right? Some of the questions that I thought of as we kind of started to plan this out, and we've from Astrato been working with you guys kind of since day one, but kind of help frame out what you started with. What considerations did you guys think about? Was it a build versus buy? And then the decision when you made to finally launch, like what did that look like for you guys? And then a little bit of the value that you bring to your customers.
Yeah, I can kind of start out, talk a little bit about just kind of maybe first just encapsulate what it is we actually do.
Yeah.
We're basically a data services partner in the healthcare supply chain space. Anybody that's worked in that space, they're probably pretty aware of the fact that there's endless data issues. It's bad data, incomplete data, siloed data. There's no standardization. There's no transparency, no visibility. It's pretty much a mess across the whole industry. So in short, our goal and our mission is basically to solve for that, by enhancing the supply chain data, and then providing that transparent visibility. So in that, our journey, Impensa created CostCloud. CostCloud is our master data platform, which now resides in Snowflake. And really to simplify that, it's really three key pieces. First, in there, we have a master reference database. It's got over 10 million medical supply items and pharmacy items that we maintain. We standardize them all, categorize them, and categorize them with our 4-level, what we call our iFlex categorization. So it's our own proprietary categorization schema. We add numerous additional attributes to that data. And so it's a very rich reference data set. And secondly, we have developed a very robust proprietary data matching engine. So what we do is we can match hospital data that gets processed through us. So we bring in hospital PO data, invoice data, item master data, contract files, pharmacy distribution files, patient data, FDA data, all kinds of data we can bring through our matching engine, match it back against our reference database to categorize it and standardize it and provide that transparency and visibility that's much needed in that data. And then thirdly, it's basically just our benchmarking. With all this data we have coming through, we've created a pretty good sized benchmark database where we can provide benchmarks, which are typically used in opportunity analysis. When folks are looking to do cost reduction projects or contract evaluation or clinical variation studies. I mean, this is all very valuable for that. So we're really an enabler. If you think of us, Impensa is kind of an enabler of supply chain product data for really any use case. And there are many, many use cases.
And I would imagine across 10 million products is pretty comparable for most healthcare organizations that you're talking to, right?
Yeah, that really is probably, I mean, sometimes we might think of it as going rabbit hunting with an elephant gun. I mean, it's that's a lot of data. Most hospitals use a fraction of that, but it's a big data set. What that allows us to do, having a reference database that large, is when we process hospital data, we can match at a very high match rate. So we're up in the very high 90s, the high 90% match rates the first time pulling data through. And it can be pretty messed up data. I mean, so we have a lot of, again, it's a pretty proprietary method and pretty detailed, well thought out method that Rob put together, in building all this stuff out, So we take that data and the use cases. I mean, you've got obviously the hospitals and health systems, but we work very closely with consultants, consultants that are doing ERP implementations or conversions, consultants that are doing cost reduction projects, and pricing opportunities and clinical variation, enabling revenue cycle companies to do analytics, preventing lost revenue. Anybody that is in analytics at all that is looking for, standardized, categorized data, supply chain data. Again, that's what we're doing is we're enabling that data so that others can use it.
Yeah,
I'm sure Dave and Rob, you guys, when you've worked with health systems, I've definitely, walked in, and when we're working with the supply chain team, I don't know why there is just a tremendous amount of Excel. They're just getting things done. The data is dirty. You enumerate like at least 7 systems, different areas. So it's a complex mess, but why do you think that is in the supply chain side for healthcare, that it's so many different things that they're touching at once?
Well, first of all, supply chain in hospitals is very complex, and there's many facets to that. And from a macro level, there's so many different setups, different systems that not one hospital has the same data. And the data is really about as good as the last Excel sheet you did in the hospital. So the sad part is they do a lot of work, they create an Excel sheet, and they come up with some pretty good information to act on, but it doesn't live on. It kind of dies with the spreadsheet. And so that's something I've seen over my 20-something years of, really good people without the right tools, without having a live integrated database and being able to, the work they do, put it back into the information and continue to utilize and measure what they found.
No, that makes perfect sense, right? So one last point, and then I want to dive into the demo and put you guys a little bit on the spot, but there's a lot of different options out there in the ecosystem, in the ethos, when it comes to data analytics, storage, all of those wonderful things that we all touch on a daily basis. What did you guys consider? And ultimately, I know we're talking about you spinning up a product and building a product in 60 days, which is phenomenal, but how did you hone in on the technologies maybe that you guys ultimately landed on?
Well, I think back in the early days, we started out kind of initial start of our whole mission was building our data asset, right? So we had, building that reference database, building that matching tool, that took a lot of work, going through that. And so when we got that done initially, we had a lot of data just sitting around in SQL databases. We'd use, Power BI or, various other tools and spreadsheets to take the richness of our data and share it with our customers. So we would go out and work with our consulting customers, and we process their data and, put together spreadsheets and send it out. And, we started out that way and, worked our way along, but then realized rather quickly that we were really going to be needing to put together a fairly decent scalable SaaS application to be able to make this whole thing work, as opposed to the way we were doing it, So, we were kind of going through that mindset and we were having those discussions, and then, voila, out of the blue sky, our old friend and client, Randy, pops in and says, hey, I just went to work for a place called Astrato, and, I want you to see what they got. I think you're really going to like it. So, we jumped in with Randy and said, hey, this looks interesting. We went through, he explained it all to us, how it works, and talked about Snowflake and how they work together with Snowflake and pull that all together. So we jumped and said, hey, let's do a proof of concept. And, we pulled some of our data in, and Randy walked me through and kind of learned how to ebb and flow through Astrato. I am not a technical person. So, I mean, it's a big, and that's, when I say not technical, I'm talking 80,000 feet, not technical. So being able to go and get into that and go through that, and we looked at some other, but quite honestly, there was a lot of opportunities that we looked at in different things that we couldn't afford it, honestly, because we were, we're a startup, we're a bootstrap company, we have no, we don't have no capital from anybody. We're doing it all from scratch. So it's kind of like, you work and you make some money and you spend it and try to keep building a company. So we didn't have a lot to give at the end of the day. So when we got into this and really started barreling through, it was really nice on both ends, both on the Snowflake side, and I'll let Rob talk more about what he did and how he took what we had and kind of walked that into Snowflake. But once we got it to Snowflake and got it in Snowflake and landed it, then for me, using Astrato, I mean, it was nice because, there's no coding, it's drag and drop, it's easy to use, it's very, very rich in functionality with the different types of functions and tool sets that they have within it. And another big thing for us was just the fact that it wasn't the standard BI tool, right? We were actually looking to build an application. So, we've got end users that range in technical skills, right? So some of them could probably pick up a BI tool raw and use the data. Others not so much. And so what we were really trying to do is to build a application that could spoon feed the end user. And so that was beautiful. The fact that I myself could take this tool and create something that would allow that to happen it says a lot about the product. And again, being small, the pricing, very competitive subscription pricing, and probably most importantly in the whole thing, what really helped make all this work is the support that we got out of Astrato. I mean, out of working with Randy and Jonathan, always jumping in to pitch in. These guys, it felt much more, it feels much more, it is actually more like a partnership. These guys are really anxious to help us and help us be successful. So they're there, at our beck and call almost. I mean, it's, we need something. We say, hey, Randy, can you help me do this? Sure. He jumps in and helps. I'm not dialing a 1-800 number, so this whole support side of this, both on the Astrato and the Snowflake side has just been tremendous, to get us to the next level. But Rob, why don't you talk a little bit about what you guys did in Snowflake?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're kind of expecting a little bit of a half step into, some better, more advanced BI tool. But really, when we started understanding what Snowflake capabilities are, we're like, this is kind of the replacement for bringing in an application development team. We can actually take the small set of resources we have and that use SQL already and start to transfer a lot of the things that we had built and developed in Azure into Snowflake. So it kind of just opened our eyes that, all of a sudden this answer fell right in front of us, that we don't have to create a big risk with a development team. So, we started, went through a quick, maybe 30-day demo with Randy, and we used some of our data and put together, stuff from start to finish. We built a Snowflake layer with a semantic layer and, dropped it into Astrato and started developing, pages that were more advanced than we had been doing with some of the, kind of other branded BI tools that we were trying. And so that went so well. We're like, okay, we're all in on this. And we jumped in and, started learning, more about Snowflake. And one of the big critical things was the governance and security, which is all built into Snowflake. So, once we understood more about what Snowflake was compared to some of the other tools we were trying to build out of, in the cloud, we focused on, developing, a security plan, and we, put together a plan, and signed up for both Astrato and Snowflake. And so, we just started building and, transferring all the tools that we had previously built were pretty easy to map over into Snowflake. And so things are going really well. We've got, many different environments. We can create databases for different use cases for different customers, and it's all secure, row level security. We can, embed and have sign-ons, that feel like the company that's using the data. And then there's just a lot of growth in Snowflake, with LLM and embedded AI tools that are, work both with Astrato and with Snowflake. So you could talk for a long time about Snowflake. It's a pretty complex tool, but we're very excited about both Snowflake and Astrato together. I think, it was very lucky for us to find these two, and it met a lot of our needs. So,
I'll say when I met Rob, I just randomly had a visit in Nashville last year, and I figured out, oh, Rob lives, close by. We'll just go grab lunch. And this is early talking about what they're attempting to do. And within weeks, reached back out and he's like, look what we built. And it was, I'm like, well, how many people are working on it? 1.5, maybe.
Right.
Randy's helping us out a little bit and doing these things. And I was super impressed, and just anxious to get you guys out in front of more people. So what you guys did really quickly.
Yeah, I would just say kind of as,
these two things together.
Several of us, being domain experts, it's so much fun to be able to work directly with the kind of semantic layers and then watch it all get built into the BI product. It's been a lot of fun, and it moves really fast. I feel like a conductor sometimes, just to the music. But when you start to tie these complex data sets, whether it's clinical, financial, or supply chain, you get into a lot of complexities that we're able to solve for at a Snowflake layer and then bring through in Astrato. It's pretty exciting. So we'll show some of that in just a second.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to say, let's get into it, right? Because I know time's ticking, and rather than talk about the value it brings to your customers, I'm a big fan of seeing it, and I know what you guys have built. I think it brings a huge impact to your customers, your potential customers, and kind of the organizations that we're talking to today. So, Dave, I think you're taking the reins on that, right?
Yeah, okay. Can you see the screen all right?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, it says it should.
There you go.
Seeing it or no?
You're good. Yep.
It's good. All right. Very good. Yeah. So this is the platform. Again, trying to put a lot of stuff together. We're bringing in a lot of different types of data. The PO, the spend data. We got our benchmarks, contract data, patient data. So we've got a lot of stuff coming into this, and which is nice because we can show the cross-cut and the integration and how this all works. But if you look across the top, kind of our menu structure, our data management, it's where you have our report cards that we look at the data we bring in and see the matches and stuff. We have our catalogs, our virtual item master, our custom reporting. A lot of that's all in here. Under our spend analytics tab, we've got a lot of stuff that we look at. I can show you this IDN view here is a good example of a high level. This is a 10 hospital system that's got 3 different ERP systems that we brought in, standardized everything. And now you can look at the data, across our this iFlex 2, 3, and 4, that's, some of our categorization. So the nice thing is you can come in here and say, well, I want to look at, one hospital, and let's look at the spend for that one hospital and see what they used. And you can march across and look and say, okay, well, let's see how much Boston Scientific is the manufacturer. So let's see how much Boston Scientific they used at that hospital and what it was. So you're able to interact here, endlessly to go through and just crush through this data. If you wanted to go in and say, well, let's say for the health system, I want to look at my joint implants. So I want to go in and look at that 39 million of joint implants and what did we do? And, which hospitals did it and which manufacturer groups, what brands, you could go in and say, well, I'm going to go into joint implants and let's look at my knees, so I can go in and look at knees. That's 17 million in knees. I can see how that's broke out in our subcategory between the components and the base plates and inserts, the constructs, all the detail. And if I want to say, well, let's just look at one brand. Let's just look at triathlon. What did we look at for triathlon? We can say, just triathlon across those hospitals, this is what we spent. So again, it's that visibility. This is completely impossible without bringing the data through and categorizing it. This would never be something that, that you'd ever be able to see. So that's one piece of it. We take this and we break the data down into product lines. So we've got several different product lines that we go through and blow into more detail, basically. The opportunities is our market baskets. This is where we incorporate our benchmarks, looking for opportunities. So we can go in and say, okay, across that whole gamut of 10 hospitals, we can see that we've got, this is the spend that they have broken down by these different categories. So this is the supply expense by the manufacturer group, brand, all of our iFlex, our nouns, the GMDN from the FDA, the HCPCS codes for the billing and reimbursement. You can see how much the spend is by each of these. So up on top, what you're seeing is in our different tiers, our 10%, 25%, 50 or 75% tier, that's showing you what the savings opportunity would be, right? So what you want to do is decide, okay, well, 50% opportunity is kind of average. So let's just go into that. So if we come down here and say, let's look at the 50% opportunity and we'll focus on that. What we're seeing here is we're seeing this 33 million in opportunity actually broke down amongst the categorization. So you can see the opportunity within the manufacturer or within the brand, within the categorization, so you're able to look and see where that opportunity lies. So if you wanted to come into, say, again, I'll pick on joint implants. If we come into joint implants and go into that, we'll look at that 4.23 million that's in there, and we can see, we can see 1.76 million of that opportunity is in knees. There's a 1.54 million in hips. You can see it broke down against the other brands. So if you wanted to go in and say, well, let's look at knees in particular, you could go into the knees and, all down below, these are the line item, supply items, that are basically in there with the target price, the target spend, the target savings, and the savings percent. So you can take and right click and dump this down to Excel and go out and knock yourself out. But that's the opportunity. A lot of good detail in that opportunity. The other data is the contract data. So actually bringing in contract data, we do a lot of different analytics around that. One of the more interesting ones we have is down here in the we're taking the contract data, tying it into the patient data, but then hooking it into the physician data, and actually looking and seeing what items, what categories do we have that are on contract and off contract. So these here on the left are the contract categories, typically from the GPO or any of the private categories, the manufacturing groups here, then you've got the doctors, over here. So you can see here in red, anything you see in red is off contract. Well, if it's off contract, that's an opportunity. You don't know if it's off contract because you don't have the contract coverage. So there just isn't a contract for those items, or maybe there is a contract, but you're not buying the stuff on the contract. So it's, it's kind of a non-compliance thing, that you might be looking at. So, if you come into the detail here, if we went into like the joints again, and looked at that specifically, what you'd be able to see is that, we've got pretty good coverage on the joint category with regards to our contracts. You've got a little bit here with Johnson & Johnson that's off contract. And the physicians, pretty much you got one doc here that's, using stuff that's off contract. And again, until we dig into it, we really don't know, whether there is a contract or whether things are being bought off the contract. But again, down below, it's giving you all the details. So these are the line item things that are all on contract. If I wanted to come in here to that Johnson & Johnson and click on that, I could see here are the Johnson & Johnson items that are not on contract. So, let's take this into the supply chain folks and see if we can't get these on contract. We drop in some of our benchmark data so you can say, well, here's the price your price you're paying off contract. If you're going to go get a contract on that, we've got some benchmark pricing that you can compare it to be sure you're getting a good price in your contract. So yeah, a lot of interesting things when you're tying the contract data, and then kind of the ultimate, next step is taking that and bring it into the patient data. So you've got supply chain data, you're taking that, you're connecting it to the contract data. Now you want to take and connect it to the patient data. So being able to come in here and look and say, okay, now I've got all that rich supply chain data that's been mined out of the EMR. And I can see here are my performing physicians with their cost per case. So you can compare their cost per case. Here's all the detailed patients, the brands, the categorization of what's been used. These are the ICD-10 groupings, the type of procedures that are done. And this is the detailed bill of goods that's actually going into the patient. So again, you can click around and look at the different physicians or the patients. I'll come back up here if I wanted to go in and look at what are they doing with triathlon knees. I could click on triathlon itself. I can see which doctors are using a triathlon knee, what their average cost per case is. I can see all their patients. And then of course I can come over and look at the bill of goods. So if I came over here, I could see, looking at one patient, I could say, okay, well, these are the 4 items that were used from triathlon in that patient, and that's the cost of them. So taking this data and actually bringing it back and tying this all in to looking at margin analytics and is kind of the holy grail, being able to take supply chain data, tie it into the contract data, and tie it into the patient data. And then of course incorporating benchmarks into all of this. That gives you a lot of variables to do a lot of analytics with. So we're really excited about the data, what the data allows, the fact that what we are enablers. We're enabling the data for folks to do this. And I think that's kind of the cool thing. They can take the stuff, it's all ready. By the time we've gotten done with it, all the work that Rob has done, put it through the semantic layer, and it's all ready to go to plug into the AI. We're very excited. We're in the early steps here of taking our next step of taking the stuff and utilizing Astrato and Snowflake and the embedding the AI and all that to apply that against all our data and start looking at some pretty cool stuff coming out of that. So that's kind of our next step.
Yeah, you beat me to the question, Dave. That was my what's next, right, through the iteration of things. And AI, as I talk, and I'm sure Joe talks to organizations everywhere, right? Like AI is like everyone has an AI checklist.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that everybody has to remember. I mean, I think people are understanding this as they jump headfirst into AI. Is AI is all fine and good, but if you don't have good data, you might as well put it in the parking lot.
Not a data cleaner.
I think that last screen is like you said, it's the holy grail. I haven't seen many health systems that have a true costing solution like that, where they can pinpoint, yeah, this patient, it might have costed us that much more, but they had all these comorbidities. At least you have the data to back that up. And also say, we have an opportunity to switch this thing to find maybe a premium alternative or go off script or renegotiate our contracts. It's so multifaceted that I think people that have been doing this work for like years and decades wish they would have had this tool instead of countless tabs of Excel and where did this data come from? And now we have a shortage. What are we going to do? All of our data is out of date. We have a new contract every year,
Well, it's the cool thing for us is being able to find some Snowflake customers in the healthcare world, that appreciate Snowflake and Astrato customers that are in healthcare and all that. Our ability to queue that data up, because what we do is we put that data out two ways. We put that data out through Snowflake to share it, and you go do what you want with it, or we put that data out over here through Astrato, to use some of our insights to be able to look into it as well. So, I mean, I think it's kind of a two-way approach that's worked really well for us. We're just very excited about the next steps. Thank you guys so much for having us. We greatly appreciate being able to kind of talk about the story, and it's good.
No, it's a good story, right? And the data sharing inside of Snowflake is an amazing opportunity for organizations to be able to work closer with you guys, and even organizations that I talk to that don't have a warehouse, right? Everything's still in a SQL database. Like, why should I make a shift? And I think you presented that well, Dave and Rob, as to why Snowflake is a viable and probably one of the best alternatives. And the fact that you can get up and running, and I won't mention other database names, but I've dealt with people over my long term that 6 months, a year down the road, they still have nothing, right? They just haven't been able to get up and running. So the fact that you guys were able to do it so quickly, right, to me speaks to the ease of use, but then also be able to harness the power of a Snowflake.
Well, we had one of our technical guys that works with us who does a tremendous amount of work in Azure. So we kind of introduced him into Snowflake, and his comment was like, "Holy crap!" This thing blows away. I mean, the performance that we were able to attain out of Snowflake increased what we were doing in Azure, by a multiple that was ridiculous. So, I mean, we got his attention, and he was kind of like poo-pooing us a little bit when we started. So,
I mean, we got this, right? that demo that you showed is it's a very realistic, very large size data set that's represents a multi-hospital system.
That's like 50 or 60 million lines, that's in that data set. It's moving like it's nothing, so
snappy.
We got some bigger data sets we're going to bring too, so it's going to be fun with that. But what we're seeing,
our largest set that still remains snappy was just under 1 billion lines. So we were impressed.
That was B with a B, right, Rob?
That was with a B, yes.
Okay.
Almost a B. Very, very close to a B. So
yeah. No, love it, right? And that was one of the things as you were going through, Dave, I certainly noticed is how snappy it was, right? But to understand that the large data sets, right? And as I talk with people all around the globe, that's always the question is how snappy is Astrato going to be, right? And it's reliant on the performance of Snowflake, and it really just, and now out of curiosity, how big is the data warehouse that you've got these millions and millions of rows inside of Snowflake?
How big
are you in an extra small?
We're still in probably like a small to medium, and we've got them divided up.
Sure.
But yeah, there's definitely some opportunities to grow to the larger, it scales up very easily as you're ready for it.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
Yeah. Putting a lot of the work into some of the semantic layer and building all the views in Snowflake just doesn't weigh down Astrato, but it really just helps Astrato do what Astrato does best. And it's such an easy platform to work with, that we get people with domain expertise, and Dave and folks are building these pages out very easily, and so they work well together like that. That's what we're just so pleased with, is just how easy it is to build and structure the data and build all the calculations into Snowflake, and then it's just a live touch to Astrato. Mm-hmm. We can turn on and turn off security for different clients and roles and things like that so easily.
Yeah, that's great. So any other questions from you, Joe? I want to make sure we're aware of time. We've got a couple minutes
Oh
left.
yeah, I have questions for days, and like I said, I think this is like there's so many rabbit holes you could go down, but just the ability to whittle it down. Because think about what they had before is just spreadsheets and spreadsheets and out of date stuff. So I think there's a huge opportunity, even for very small health systems that maybe can't compete with the Mayos and Cleveland Clinics of the world, that need to go in and renegotiate and make sure what they bought, they actually are paying the right amount. There's some huge things and a lot of, I'm probably tens of millions of dollars, even for a small health system, just to go in and optimize, which means, you get to keep your beds open in your hospital and not close those down as everything else gets constrained. So I'm really excited to get you in front of some more folks.
Yeah. No, appreciate
We
it.
appreciate it.
Yeah. So as a call to action, if anyone wants to learn more, I put up some QR codes, right? We've got a free trial of Astrato. Feel free to click it, sign up. Don't be alarmed. I will be reaching out if you do. Right. If you want to get started with Snowflake, they've got free trials on Snowflake. That's that middle code. And then if you want to connect with Rob and Dave, because you forget their names, this takes you right to their homepage, and they've got a contact button right on their homepage. So if you have any questions, right, find us, reach out. We're happy to address them, and certainly happy to make introductions. But Dave and Rob, I really appreciate you guys putting the time, right, seeing what you've built, kind of sharing your story. To me, it's inspiring, because it's always the conversation I have with people all the time is, how long is this going to take me to actually get up and running, right? And I think you guys, being as you said, a person and a half, right, going from zero to kind of full throttle in 60 days or less, I think should give organizations the inspiration, the size of them, that run fast, right, and not be afraid of running fast, because everyone can keep up with what they're doing. But also what you guys are bringing to market, being in some more rural areas that are underserved, to Joe's point, right, that can't compete with the big guys. We see it all the time. They have to close the doors, or they have to merge, or where I live, I don't have urgent care on the weekends, right? It doesn't exist. I have to travel close to an hour to get to urgent care on the weekends, and I'm not one to go to the emergency room, right? So some of those things that I think you guys bring to market and can really help service the healthcare community is an inspiration to me.
Yeah, we're partnered with a lot of folks that are trying to solve that problem at, whether it's large systems or small systems. We've never seen so much pressure as there is now. There's such a complex environment. We're just getting out of all the supply chain problems. You have tremendous pressure on labor cost, and just a lot of places are losing grants, and there's just been shifts in the payer mix and things like that are really affecting everybody at all levels. So we can certainly get some of this data together to help any of those kind of folks.
Yeah. At least give them a fighting chance.
That's right.
Okay. Any last parting comments? We've got about, looks like 90 seconds left. I appreciate everyone out there for, tuning in, listening in. This, again, will be shared, I'm sure, in multiple avenues. But again, thank you guys. But any last parting comments before we end the broadcast?
No, I think we're
good.
Good.
Thanks for having us.
Really appreciate the opportunity.
Always a pleasure. Thank you guys, and I'm sure we'll talk soon with everyone out there.
All right.
Have a great day.
Thank you very much. See you guys.
Bye-bye.